Welcome to Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
It's a truly universal experience.
Oh, absolutely.
But at the same time, when you are the one going through it, it feels incredibly isolating.
Yeah, you feel totally alone.
Right. You are just sitting there replaying a situation in your head for the 100th time, the 1,000th time.
Dissecting every single word of that last conversation.
Exactly. Looking for clues in the micro-expressions, just, waiting for that text to come through.
Waiting for the phone to ring.
Waiting for that person who hurt you, who completely upended your reality, to finally turn around and say, I'm so sorry, and here's exactly the psychological breakdown of why I did what I did.
Right, like they're just going to hand you a neat little folder with all the answers.
Which never happens. So welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you were here with us. Because today, we have a mission.
A very important one.
We are going to unpack one of the most frustrating, agonizing human experiences there is. Waiting for an apology or an explanation that is, in all likelihood, never going to come.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. And we are going to do this by looking at two incredibly poignant pieces of source material today. We have a beautifully written essay titled The Myth of Closure and the Path to Peace.
Such a good piece.
So good. And we are combining that with a brutal but very necessary reality check from episode 81 of the QofeBreak deep dive.
Ah, yeah.
Which is titled The Truth About Why You'll Never Get the Closure You're Looking For.
It is a heavy topic for sure, but an absolutely crucial one to dissect. The title of that QofeBreak episode really does not pull any punches, does it?
Not at all. It's like a wrecking ball.
Right out of the gate, it establishes that the thing we are desperately seeking might be, a complete fabrication.
It really does. And honestly, if you are listening to this right now, chances are you know exactly what this feels like.
You've been there.
You might be in the middle of it right this very second. You might be staring at your phone, willing it to light up with a specific name.
Just begging the universe for one text.
Yeah. And I want to validate that for you. This deep dive isn't just going to be some dry clinical analysis of human psychology.
No, not at all.
We are looking at this as an essential toolkit for reclaiming your personal peace. Because right now, if you are waiting for someone else to give you closure, it's like, you are essentially standing at a bus stop for a route that was canceled 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. That is a perfect way to describe it.
You are standing there in the rain, looking down the street, putting your entire life on hold for a vehicle that is never, ever going to arrive to pick you up.
And meanwhile, the rest of the world is just driving by.
Exactly. And you are trapped in this state of suspended animation.
The canceled bus route is such a visceral image because it captures the core contradiction we are going to explore today. And it's a massive contradiction.
How so?
Well, society constantly reinforces the idea that we literally need this. We are told through every medium available that we need that final conversation to heal.
Right. The movie ending.
Yes. We are conditioned to believe that closure is an event that happens between two people, like a transaction that balances the emotional ledger.
But our sources today say otherwise, right?
They argue the exact opposite. They argue that demanding this external validation, insisting that the other person must hand you the missing puzzle piece before you can move on.
Yeah.
That's actually the very thing keeping you trapped at that bus stop. It is the demand for the explanation that creates the emotional purgatory.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, it sounds so simple when you say it out loud. Stop tethering yourself to someone who isn't there.
Easier said than done.
Way easier. When you are in it, it doesn't feel like you are choosing to be trapped. It feels like you are just in excruciating pain and wanting it to stop.
Of course.
So why do our brains do this to us? Why do we set up camp at a canceled bus stop and refuse to leave?
Well, there is a very real neurobiological reason for it.
Like fighting evolution.
Yeah.
Because if the tribe kicks you out without an explanation, historically speaking, you die. So this need for an explanation isn't just a modern neurosis, is it? It feels like a literal survival instinct.
What's fascinating here is exactly that evolutionary underpinning. You are entirely correct. The human brain is a meaning-making machine.
Right. It wants to solve the puzzle.
And it absolutely despises an open loop.
Yeah.
In psychology, there is a concept, it's called the Zeigarnik effect.
Okay, the Zeigarnik effect, what is that?
It dictates that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks way better than completed tasks.
Oh, interesting.
So when someone exits your life abruptly, without an explanation, the brain categorizes that as a massive unresolved threat loop.
Like a file it can't close on a computer.
Exactly like that. Waiting for an explanation is very often a defense mechanism against the cognitive dissonance of the situation. It's a shield against accepting a deeply painful reality.
Wow, so we just wait to avoid the pain of it being over.
Think about it. As long as you're waiting for the real explanation or the final apology, the event hasn't fully concluded in your mind.
Oh, I see. The dynamic isn't totally dead yet, because there's still this one final transaction pending.
Precisely. It gives us an illusion of control. We harbor this subconscious belief that if we can just understand the why...
Why they lied, why they...
Right. If we just know why they betrayed us, then the hurt will somehow be neutralized. The brain thinks, if I can map the logic of the threat disappears.
If it map the logic of the threat disappears. That is so deeply ingrained in us. We think understanding the weapon heals the wound.
Which is a complete fallacy.
But wait, I have to push back a little here on the source's premise.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't it just basic human decency to want things to make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, if someone drops an absolute bomb on your life, it causes massive destruction, and then just walks away.
Without a single word.
Yeah, without a word. Isn't waiting for an explanation just a basic, rational demand for human decency? Aren't we entirely justified in wanting that person to take accountability?
You are. You absolutely are justified.
Because it feels almost like giving up to just say, well, I guess I'll never know.
I hear you. It is entirely human to want a narrative to have a beginning, a middle, and a logical end. When someone denies you that logical end, it feels like a profound violation of the social contract.
Exactly. It's fundamentally unfair.
But the essay, The Myth of Closure and the Path to Peace, highlights isn't that you want it. The problem is what wanting it does to your nervous system over time.
Okay, that makes sense.
The author isn't arguing that the person who hurt you was right to withhold an apology, or that their silence is acceptable.
They aren't letting them off the hook.
Not at all. They are arguing that your expectation of their decency is destroying you, not them.
Oh, wow. That hits hard.
The desire for decency is valid, but relying on someone who has already demonstrated a severe lack of decency to suddenly provide it?
That's the trap.
That is exactly where the trap snaps shut. You are expecting a drought to suddenly produce rain.
Right. And to you listening, I really want to highlight this friction because it is so easy to fall into a shame spiral here.
It really is.
You might be sitting there thinking, why can't I just get over this? Why am I still obsessing over what they did when they clearly don't care?
You beat yourself up over it.
Totally. But wanting an apology doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you are broken or lacking resilience.
Not at all.
It just makes you a human being whose brain is trying desperately to reconcile the person you trusted with the person who caused the harm.
That cognitive dissonance is definite.
It's so loud. But like we are discovering in these sources, we have to shift the metric of success here. We have to stop asking, is an apology deserved?
Because yes, objectively, you probably deserve an apology.
Right. But the real functional question is waiting for it effective?
Yeah.
Is this holding pattern actually facilitating your recovery, or is it inducing a state of cognitive stagnation?
That is the pivotal shift. Moving from what is deserved in a perfectly just world to what is effective in the deeply flawed reality we actually inhabit.
Because the weight itself is doing the damage now.
Exactly. Once you deeply analyze the mechanics of the weight, you realize it is entirely destructive. And that forces a very uncomfortable realization.
Which is?
If the weight is destroying us, it naturally leads us to question the very goal of that weight. We have to look critically at this prize we're suffering for.
The so-called closure.
Right. What exactly is this closure we are waiting for? What are the actual parameters of this thing we are sacrificing our present moments to achieve?
Which is exactly where the insights from QofeBreak, episode 81, come in like a wrecking ball. The truth about why you'll never get the closure you're looking for.
They really tear it down.
We really need to spend some time dissecting their premise because the hosts of that show deconstruct this idea in a way that is harsh, yes, but when you really sit with it, it is incredibly liberating.
It's a tough truth, but a freeing one.
They aren't just saying the other person's a jerk who won't apologize. They are making a much deeper structural argument about the nature of closure itself.
Liberating is the right word, though it feels like a cold plunge initially.
Like an ice bath for the soul.
Exactly. Because the reality they present goes far beyond the cynical view that the other person is stubbornly withholding an apology out of spite or cowardice.
Right. It's not just about them being stubborn.
The deeper, more profound truth, they argue, is that the version of closure we are looking for, that cinematic, perfectly wrapped up, perfectly articulated resolution,
Yep.
it simply does not actually exist in the physical world. It is a phantom generated by our own desire for order.
Let's really dig into that disparity between expectation and reality, because I think this is where we trip ourselves up the most.
We build it up so much in our heads.
We have this elaborate fantasy of the final conversation. We imagine we are going to meet at a neutral coffee shop. They're going to look us dead in the eye and say, "I have done the work."
I realize now the sheer magnitude of my mistakes.
Yes, you were right about everything. Here is a detailed, itemized list of my psychological shortcomings that led me to hurt you, and I will carry the weight of this regret for the rest of my natural life.
It's a beautiful script, isn't it?
It's an Oscar-winning script. We want them to validate our exact experience of the pain.
We want them to become the perfect narrator of our own suffering. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, Episode 81 points out why that is statistically impossible.
Because people don't work like that.
No, even if by some absolute miracle of circumstances a final conversation does occur, it rarely brings that profound, grounding resolution we crave.
Why is that? Why doesn't it feel like we think it will?
Because the explanation they give will almost certainly be inadequate. We have to remember that human beings are fundamentally wired for self-preservation.
Oh, right. The ego.
Exactly. Any explanation they offer will likely be heavily redacted and filtered through their own ego, their own cognitive biases, and their need to not view themselves as the villain in their own life story.
So they'll spin it.
Always. Their truth might be entirely self-serving. Or even worse, they might tell you a version of the truth that is so callous, so flippant, or so completely disconnected from your shared reality.
That it just hurts you all over again.
Exactly. It causes an entirely new layer of trauma. You went in looking to meticulously heal a specific wound, and you walk out with 3 new ones because their perspective of the event invalidates yours entirely.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It is. Therefore, relying on them to provide the perfect closure is chasing an impossible, mathematically flawed fantasy.
The burned restaurant analogy makes me realize something incredibly uncomfortable about myself when I've been in this situation.
Tell me about the burned restaurant.
Okay, so imagine you had a favorite restaurant, but it burned to the ground. It is just ash, twisted metal, and charred wood now.
Just completely destroyed.
Completely. But you keep going back to the ruins, sitting at a burned table, demanding that the chef cook you a perfect 5-star meal.
Oh.
You are demanding something from an environment that simply does not have the capacity to produce it anymore. The conditions for a healthy, satisfying resolution do not exist.
That is so true. The kitchen is gone.
Exactly. But here's the uncomfortable part. When I demand that meal from the ashes, I'm not just asking for food. I'm actively ignoring the smell of the smoke.
You're denying the reality.
I'm denying the reality of the destruction because the fantasy of the meal is safer than admitting the restaurant is gone forever. The relationship, in the form that could have provided safety, honesty, and a real apology, is burned down.
That is a brilliant expansion of the concept. You are demanding a nourishing, life-sustaining meal from a pile of toxic ashes.
And it's just never going to happen.
The capacity simply isn't there, and by demanding it, you are denying the reality of the fire. And what Episode 81 does so well is shift the blame, in a very healthy, functional way, off of your shoulders.
Wait, how does it shift the blame?
It reminds you that you aren't failing to find closure because you aren't asking the right questions, or because you haven't sent the perfectly worded text message.
Oh, I see. It's not my fault they won't answer.
No. You are failing to find it because the other person is fundamentally, structurally incapable of providing the answers you need in the way your brain requires them. They do not have the ingredients to cook the meal.
So let me pose a philosophical question to you, the listener, and to you, my co-host. Let's play out the fantasy.
Okay, let's play it out.
Let's say, hypothetically, the impossible actually happens. The chef somehow cooks the meal in the ashes.
A miracle occurs.
The perfect apology is delivered. They say all the right words. They take full accountability. They cry. They validate every ounce of your pain.
The dream scenario.
Right. Does that actually hit the undo button on your nervous system? Does hearing, I am so deeply sorry I betrayed you, actually erase the physical sensation of the betrayal?
That is the $1,000,000 con.
Or does it just leave you with an entirely different flavor of disappointment because you suddenly realize the apology doesn't magically fix the past? You get the words, but you still have the wound.
This raises an important question, and it is the absolute crux of the illusion we build around apologies. We fundamentally equate an apology with a time machine.
A time machine, yes.
We subconsciously believe it will transport us back to the moment before the pain happened, to a state of unruptured trust. But it doesn't.
It can't unring the bell.
Oh, if you look at behavioral psychology, even when people receive the exact verbatim apology they begged the universe for, there is often a profound, hollow sense of letdown.
Wait, really? They actually feel let down by the apology?
Very often, yes. They receive the words and they realize, oh, you're sorry. You understand what you did, but my heart is still broken.
My trust is still completely shattered.
Exactly. My daily life is still irrevocably altered. The external validation of an apology does not and cannot bypass the brutal internal work of grieving the loss.
I want you to really let that sink in for a second. Reflect on a time in your life when you did get a genuine, heartfelt apology from someone who deeply hurt you.
A real sincere one.
Did it instantly heal the wound? Did the sky open up, the heavy weight lift off your chest, and you never felt a single pang of sadness about it again?
It rarely works that way.
Or did you find that the real healing, the grueling work of rebuilding your shattered self-esteem, the daily processing of the grief, the terrifying process of learning to trust another human being again, did all of that heavy lifting still have to happen entirely internally, regardless of their perfectly spoken words?
Almost universally, the data shows that the real healing has to happen internally. The apology might offer a momentary validation, but it doesn't do the work.
It's just words at the end of the day.
Which means that if QofeBreak 81 is correct, that the external perfect closure we seek is practically impossible to obtain and wouldn't be a magic time-traveling cure even if we got it. It forces us to completely reevaluate the entire foundation of what we are doing. We have to look squarely at the core thesis of the first source we mentioned, the myth of closure and the path to peace. We have to examine the word myth.
Yes. Let's take a magnifying glass to that specific word, myth. Because we are swimming in a culture that treats closure like it is a tangible, universally guaranteed right.
It's everywhere in our media.
You watch any movie, read any book, listen to any pop song, and there's always a climax of resolution.
Always standing in the pouring rain.
Yes. The characters confront each other in the pouring rain, they yell, they cry, the grand misunderstanding is cleared up, and they either get back together or part ways with a profound mutual understanding of their shared history.
It's a neat little bow on top of the trauma.
Exactly. Pop culture and media constantly perpetuate this myth that life operates on a clean, three-act structure.
They absolutely do, and it deeply programs our expectations of reality. We are fed a steady diet of narrative resolution from the time we are children.
So we expect it in real life.
Naturally. In fiction, every loose end gets meticulously tied up because that is what makes a story satisfying for a consumer to digest. The human brain loves symmetry.
But life isn't symmetrical.
No, life is not a scripted narrative. The essay argues that the myth is the idea that closure is a transactional event between two people.
Like a business deal.
Exactly. It is this deeply ingrained false belief that closure is a legal document that requires two signatures to be valid. The myth says you must sit down, you must exchange your respective truths, you both sign off on the shared reality, and only then are you officially closed and permitted to move on.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we connect this to the bigger picture of how we manage our own lives, treating closure as a mandatory two-person job is incredibly dangerous.
Oh, incredibly. Why do you say that?
Because you are willingly giving away all your emotional sovereignty. The myth relies on a false dependency. It programs your brain to say, I am currently broken and I cannot be whole until you, the person who broke me, give me the missing piece.
You hold the master key to my emotional freedom.
Right. Think about how terrifying that dynamic actually is. You are handing the keys to your mental health, your peace, your future, to the exact person who just vividly demonstrated they are entirely careless with your heart.
It's absurd when you frame it like that.
You are outsourcing your agency to an unreliable contractor.
Precisely. It is a profound, debilitating surrender of agency. When you buy into the myth of mutual closure, you make your recovery entirely contingent on the behavior of someone who has already proven to be untrustworthy, absent, or cruel.
You're waiting for the villain to save you.
You are outsourcing your healing. And as long as your healing is outsourced, you are stuck in the waiting room of your own life. You have placed a ceiling on your own recovery that is dictated by someone else's capacity for empathy.
But I have to play devil's advocate here because I can hear people listening and thinking exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay, let's hear the pushback.
I hear everything you're saying, and intellectually sitting here in a vacuum makes total sense. But let's push back on the practical application of this. If closure is a complete myth, if it doesn't exist the way society tells us it does, what on earth are we aiming for?
A fair question.
Are we just supposed to walk around with open, bleeding, unresolved chapters in the book of our lives? Are we just supposed to accept that massive, life-altering events will permanently be left hanging without an ending?
It sounds awful, doesn't it?
Because honestly, that sounds incredibly chaotic. It sounds like living with 50 open tabs on your browser, all playing different audio, and you're never allowed to close any of them. It sounds like a recipe for chronic anxiety.
It does sound chaotic, and it would be chaotic if you look at it through the traditional myth-based lens of what an open chapter means.
Right.
But that is the precise paradigm shift these sources are demanding we make. You aren't leaving the tabs open to drain your battery. No. You are realizing that the tabs were actually closed the moment the person walked away, but you've been staring at a frozen computer screen, refusing to believe the connection was severed.
Oh, wow. The screen is just frozen.
The intense fear of the unresolved is what keeps us trapped. We think unresolved by them means unresolved for me. But letting go of the myth of closure is actually the very first step toward true relief because it changes the definition of an ending.
Because it stops you from chasing a mirage in the desert. You stop expecting the sand to turn into a lake.
Exactly. If you definitively know there is no water out there, you stop running into the sand. You conserve your energy.
That makes a lot of sense.
To you listening, if the idea of an unresolved chapter is causing a spike in your anxiety right now, let me offer a reframing from the essay. The chapter is resolved.
It's already done.
The ending was just poorly written by the other person. It was abrupt. It was unsatisfying. It lacked a proper epilogue. It might have been a terrible piece of writing. But the chapter is factually over.
That's like reading a bad book that just stops mid-sentence.
Exactly. Acknowledging that the ending was terrible and hurtful is very different from pretending the story is still ongoing and waiting for them to write a better draft.
Oh, that is a subtle but incredibly powerful distinction. The chapter is over. It was just poorly written. The book isn't waiting for a final page. The final page is just blank, and that is the ending.
The blank page is the ending.
And that realization brings us to the absolute core thesis of this entire deep dive. If closure is not a two-person transaction, if it's not a signed document exchanged in a neutral coffee shop, then it must be a solo endeavor.
It has to be.
Which leads us to the most empowering, heavily emphasized concept in both our sources. Closure is an inside job.
Closure is an inside job. This is the pivotal turning point of the entire philosophy.
It's a great phrase.
We have spent the first half of our time together dismantling the illusion of the external apology. We've established the trap. Now we have to unpack what it practically, mechanistically means to manufacture your own resolution.
Because we can't just leave it at theory.
Right. If you can't outsource it, how do you do an inside job on your own grief? What does emotional sovereignty actually look like in practice?
So what does this all mean, practically speaking? Because inside job sounds a bit like a bank heist movie, but in a good way. It sounds proactive.
It is entirely proactive, and it is a bit like a heist. You are stealthily stealing your power back from the person who took it.
I love that.
Breaking down the mechanics of the inside job means shifting the locus of control entirely back to yourself. In cognitive behavioral therapy, there is a core concept called radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance, we hear that a lot.
The essay touches heavily on this, though we haven't formally introduced the term yet. This is where radical acceptance is applied as a tool, not just a buzzword.
What does it actually look like?
Radical acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It doesn't mean you forgive them or that you think it was fair.
Okay, good. Because it wasn't fair.
Right. Radical acceptance means accepting reality exactly as it is without trying to fight it or demand it be different. It means accepting that the profound disrespect you were shown, the agonizing silence you received, or the cruel, abrupt departure you experienced. That behavior is the closure.
The behavior is the closure.
Yes. You do not need them to explicitly narrate their exit. Their actions have already provided the definitive, undeniable answer regarding who they are and what they are capable of.
The silence is the answer. The disrespect is the closure. The refusal to apologize is the final statement.
It's loud and clear if you choose to listen to it.
That is a jagged, tough pill to swallow, but it is the medicine. Let me give you an analogy for how I visualize this inside job, because thinking about it purely in terms of acceptance can feel a little passive, and this is anything but passive.
Okay, let's hear the analogy.
Imagine your mind, your emotional well-being, your entire life is a corporation. Let's call it You Incorporated.
You Incorporated, I like that.
When you are in a deep relationship with someone, you give them a prominent seat on your board of directors. They get a major vote in how things are run, how you feel, how the company's resources like your time and energy are allocated.
They hold a lot of stock.
Exactly. But then they embezzle from the company, they betray the core mission, they walk out.
A huge scandal at You Incorporated.
Right. So waiting for external closure is like leaving their leather chair empty at the boardroom table, refusing to make any major company decisions, refusing to launch any new products until they come back to the boardroom to explain exactly why they abandoned their posts.
Which is a remarkably dangerous and negligent way to run a business. The company will go bankrupt while you stare at an empty chair.
Extremely. It is emotional bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So doing the inside job is essentially executing a hostile corporate takeover of your own mind.
A hostile takeover. I love the aggression in that.
You have to be aggressive about your piece. You are kicking them off the board of directors. You are legally, emotionally, and permanently revoking their voting rights.
They don't get a say anymore.
None. They no longer get a single say in how your emotional company is run. You are not waiting for them to file their official resignation paperwork. You are firing them in absentia.
Just boxing up their desk and putting it in the hallway?
Exactly. You are sitting down at the head of the table, you are grabbing the gavel, and you are writing the final executive summary yourself. This person is no longer affiliated with you and incorporated, effective immediately due to a catastrophic failure to align with our core values. Boom! Gavel slams. The matter is closed.
That analogy perfectly captures the friction and the effort involved, because what that highlights is the highly active nature of the process.
You have to do the firing.
Yes, you are not a passive victim waiting for the universe or time or the other person to eventually grant you relief. You are an active executive architect of your own healing. You are taking the pen back from them.
It's your company.
When you fully internalize that closure is an inside job, you realize a profound truth. You have had the materials to build your own peace all along.
Yeah.
You just had to stop looking out the window, waiting for a delivery truck that was never coming.
Yeah.
You had the lumber in your own backyard.
I want you to feel the weight of that empowerment right now, wherever you are listening to this. If you have been feeling small or stuck or perpetually waiting, realize that you hold all the executive power right now.
You hold all the cards.
You don't need them to say a single solitary word for you to be completely free. You can grant yourself the permission to move forward today, right now. You can declare the matter settled in your own mind. You can fire them from the board.
But of course, acknowledging that closure is an inside job is incredibly intellectually satisfying while we sit here and discuss it.
It sounds great on a podcast. I mean, a deep dive.
Right. It feels powerful to say, I'm firing them from the board. I am sovereign. The actual grueling challenge, however, is the execution, because we aren't robots.
No, we definitely aren't.
How does one actually execute this in the messy reality of daily life? So hypothetically, I fired them from the board, I've ripped up the corporate charter, but tomorrow morning, I still have to wake up, make my coffee, and physically feel the absence of that person.
The ghost is still lingering in the kitchen.
Exactly. How does this inside job actually translate to a Tuesday morning? How do we walk what the essay calls the path to peace?
Yes, moving from theory to practice. Moving on without the final conversation. We have to talk about the practical, day-to-day friction of moving forward when the final pages of the relationship were left totally blank by the other person.
Because the brain, as we discussed, hates a vacuum.
How do you stop your brain from trying to obsessively fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios and self-blame?
This brings us to a critical junction where we must define the true parameters of peace in this specific context. We need to fiercely manage our expectations.
What does peace actually look like then?
Walking the path to peace does not mean you suddenly develop profound amnesia. It does not mean you wake up on that Tuesday morning and you never think about them again, or that you have to pretend the betrayal didn't absolutely gut you.
That's just lying to yourself.
It is. That is toxic positivity, it is emotional suppression, and psychologically it completely backfires. Peace, in the context of an unresolved ending, means something much more subtle.
Subtle how?
It means that the lack of an apology no longer triggers a debilitating holding pattern in your daily life. It means neutralizing the intense emotional charge of the unfinished business. The memory is there, but the venom is gone.
Okay, I have a major pushback here because I think there is a hidden trap on the other side of this empowerment too.
Let's hear it.
Is there a danger in moving on too quickly? Like if we just boldly say, it's an inside job, they're off the board, I've radically accepted it, and we slam the vault door locked, are we actually finding genuine peace?
Or are we avoiding it?
Right. Are we just sweeping the profound trauma, the betrayal, and the very real grief under the rug to avoid facing the fact that we were deeply, perhaps permanently, altered by this hurt? Because ignoring pain or rushing to closure just to feel strong isn't healing it. It's just compartmentalizing it until it explodes later.
You are hitting on a vital, incredibly nuanced distinction. There is a massive psychological difference between avoidance and genuine internal processing. And the path to peace requires the latter.
What does avoidance look like?
Sweeping it under the rug looks like this. I don't care. They mean nothing to me. I'm completely unfazed. I'm firing them and never speaking of this again. That is avoidance. It is a brittle armor.
It's fake toughness.
Yes. The unresolved energy is still there, rotting under the floorboards of your psyche, and it will eventually manifest as anxiety or a complete inability to trust the next person you meet.
So what does genuine processing look like?
Genuine internal processing, the actual grueling path to peace, looks much more like this. What they did was incredibly painful. I am deeply, profoundly hurt that I didn't get an apology. I'm going to allow myself to grieve the loss of the relationship. And I am going to grieve the loss of the closure I desperately wanted. I accept that it hurts immensely, but I refuse to let that hurt stop me from participating in my own life.
Wait. That is huge. You grieve the lack of closure as its own separate loss.
Exactly.
It's not just grieving the person, it's grieving the ending you were denied. You have to mourn the apology you never got.
Exactly. It is a secondary loss. You process the pain, but you decouple the mechanism of your healing from the other person's actions.
You decouple it. I like that.
You say, I am bleeding, but I am entirely responsible for tending to my own wounds now. I am not waiting for the person who stabbed me to suddenly show up with the bandages and apologize for holding the knife.
You become your own medic.
Yes. The path to peace is a daily, sometimes hourly practice of redirecting your neural pathways. When the thought arises, why did they do it? Was I not enough? You don't suppress the thought.
You don't just shove it down.
No, you acknowledge it, but you gently, firmly remind yourself the why doesn't matter anymore. Their actions told me everything I needed to know about their capacity for respect and honesty. I am choosing to invest this cognitive energy back into my own present moment.
The why doesn't matter anymore. That is such a practical, grounding mantra. And I want to ensure that as you are listening to this, you understand that this path to peace is not perfectly linear.
It's a bumpy road.
Very bumpy. You are going to have days where you feel like a completely empowered, untouchable CEO of You Incorporated, and you are going to have days where you are sitting right back at that metaphorical bus stop in the pouring rain, looking down the road, feeling that visceral ache of wanting an apology.
Relapses are part of the process.
You will have relapses of the weight, and that is completely okay. The goal isn't immediate, flawless perfection. The goal is a steady progression toward emotional sovereignty. So I ask you, what stands out to you from all of this deep psychological maneuvering?
It's a lot to take in.
What is one small step, one tiny shift in perspective or physical action that you can take today to declare the conversation officially over, even if the other person's lips never moved?
The tactical application of this can be surprisingly simple. It might be as simple as writing down the exact perfect apology you wish you had received from them.
Writing it out yourself.
Yes. Writing every validation you crave, reading it out loud to yourself to give it voice, and then burning the paper to physically symbolize the release of the expectation. Oh, I love the idea of physically burning it.
Or it might be the very practical step of physically blocking their number and their social media, not as a game, not to see if they notice, but to remove the neurological possibility of the weight.
Taking away the open channel.
If your brain knows they literally cannot text you, You significantly reduce the subconscious waiting for a text. You starve the open threat loop. You take the control back through your own definitive actions.
Yes. Block the number. Unfriend them. Not out of spite, not as a punishment to them, but as an act of fierce self-preservation for yourself.
Protect your peace.
Close the bus stop. Put a massive sign up that says route terminated. Please seek alternative transportation. Board up the burn restaurant so you stop wandering into the ashes.
I love the finality of that imagery. It is about building physical and digital boundaries that reinforce your internal emotional boundaries.
Well, as we start to pull all these complex, heavy threads together, let's collaboratively recap the psychological journey we have been on today, because we have covered a tremendous amount of emotional ground from our two sources. We really have.
First, we identified the trap of the unsent apology. We established that waiting for an explanation that is never coming isn't just frustrating. It is a psychological holding pattern rooted in our evolutionary need for closed loops that actively pauses your life and your personal growth.
Second, we confronted the hard, liberating truths from QofeBreak episode 81. We looked at the reality that external closure is largely an illusion.
A total phantom.
Even if you get the final conversation, the apology is rarely perfectly satisfying. It is often filtered through their ego, and it almost never acts as a time machine to erase the pain. The perfect cinematic closure you are seeking simply doesn't exist out there in the real world.
Third, we deconstructed the pervasive pop culture myth of two-person closure. We realized that believing someone else holds the missing piece to your wholeness is a dangerous, debilitating surrender of your own agency.
You give away all your power.
You do not need their signature on an emotional document to be free. Outsourcing your healing is a recipe for perpetual victimhood.
Which naturally led to our fourth and most critical insight. True closure is entirely an inside job. It is built on the rigorous application of radical acceptance.
The hostile takeover.
Exactly. It is looking squarely at the stark reality of their actions, their silence, their abrupt departure, their blatant disrespect, and accepting that behavior as the final, definitive answer. You execute a hostile takeover of your own mind and fire them from the board of directors of your life.
And finally, we explored the friction of the path to peace. We learned that peace doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean faking that you aren't hurt.
No toxic positivity allowed.
It means decoupling your healing from their actions. It is grieving the lack of an apology as a secondary loss. It is a daily active practice of letting their silence be the final conversation and choosing to walk forward into your own life anyway.
It is about consistently neutralizing the emotional charge. You take your power back day by day, moment by moment, by refusing to let their inability to communicate dictate your ability to thrive.
I cannot stress enough how profoundly transformative it is to take back the pen and write your own ending. To you, listening right now, wherever you are on this journey, you have the absolute power to close this chapter today.
You really do.
You do not need their permission. You do not need their validation. You do not need their apology. You are fully equipped right this very second to declare this finished and start writing the next beautifully blank page of your own life.
And as we leave you to process and think about all of the mechanics of this, I want to offer one final provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
We spend so much of our finite, precious time obsessing over the ending that was unfairly denied to us. But if we permanently stop measuring our ability to heal by the willingness of broken people to apologize, we are forced to ask ourselves a much bigger question.
What's the question?
What incredibly vibrant, beautiful, uncharted chapters are we currently delaying in our own lives simply because we are stubbornly refusing to turn the page on a story that is already over?
Wow, what a profound question to sit with. It is time to stop waiting. Step out of the rain, leave the canceled bus stop behind, and start walking toward wherever it is you actually want to go. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of your own peace. I'll be right here with you next time.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take care.